He fixes things that already stopped. He stopped too. That is how my mother described my father to anyone who asked. To her sister. To her friends at the country club. To the man she left us for. To me once when she thought I was too young to understand. I was 7. I understood. My father sat in a basement surrounded by 400 broken clocks, and to the rest of the world, he was as dead as every one of them. Frozen in time. Forgotten. A man whose hands moved but whose life had stopped long before anyone noticed. When he died, my brother got the house. My sister got 300,000 in savings. I got the basement. 400 clocks that did not work, a workbench covered in gears and springs, and a leather notebook with my name on the cover. I did not laugh. I did not cry. I opened the notebook to the first page and read, Clock number 1. Howard Miller Grandfather Clock, 1923. Behind the faceplate, 3rd gear from the left, you will find a leather pouch. Inside, 14 gold Liberty coins, dated 1891 through 1907. Estimated value, $42,000. Keep opening, son. All 400. I looked up at the lawyer. He was staring at me. Did you know about this? He asked. I should have seen it coming. The signs were all there. Stretching back to the first time, my father put a broken pocket watch in my hand and said, Listen, every clock has a secret. My name is Garrett Sable, and this is the story of how 400 broken clocks taught me that the things everyone else throws away are sometimes the most valuable things in the world. My father, Leland Sable, was a horologist. Most people did not know what that word meant. Neither did my mother when she married him. She thought it sounded impressive, like a scientist or a professor, something she could tell her friends about at parties. My husband is a horologist, she would say, enjoying the way people's eyebrows rose. Then they would ask what that meant, and she would have to explain that he repaired clocks and watches for a living, and their eyebrows would come back down, and the conversation would move on to something more interesting. That was the beginning of the end of my parents' marriage. The moment she realized that horologist was a fancy word for a man who sat in a basement with tiny tools, bent over broken machines, listening for sounds that only he could hear. My father's workshop was in the basement of our house in Westfield, Connecticut. It was not a large space, maybe 20 feet by 15, with low ceilings and a concrete floor that was always cold. But my father had transformed it into something extraordinary. Every wall was covered with clocks. Floor to ceiling, edge to edge, hundreds of them. Grandfather clocks stood in the corners like ancient sentinels. Cuckoo clocks hung in clusters above the workbench. Mantel clocks sat on shelves that he had built himself, each one at a precise height so he could examine them without bending or reaching. Some were working. You could hear them ticking, a layered symphony of mechanical heartbeats, each one slightly out of sync with the others, creating a sound that was both chaotic and beautiful. Some were silent, waiting for his hands to bring them back to life. Some had been waiting for years. The smell of that basement is something I will never forget. Machine oil and brass polish and old wood, mixed with the coffee my father drank by the gallon and the peppermint candies he kept in a jar on his workbench. It smelled like patience, like concentration, like a man who was perfectly content to spend his days doing the thing he loved most in the world. My mother hated that basement. You spend more time with those machines than you spend with your family, she would say, standing at the top of the stairs, backlit by the kitchen light, her voice sharp with resentment. The machines need me, my father would reply, not looking up from whatever delicate mechanism he was adjusting with tweezers and a magnifying glass. They cannot fix themselves. Neither can this marriage. He would look up then, his eyes sad behind his magnifying lenses, and he would set down his tools and come upstairs and try to be the husband she wanted. He would take her to dinner, make conversation, pretend to care about the things she cared about, real estate listings and school fundraisers and what the neighbors were doing with their kitchen. But his heart was always in the basement. His heart was always with the clocks. My mother, Vivian, was not a cruel woman. I want to make that clear. She was a practical woman who had married the wrong man and did not know how to accept that reality. She had grown up in a family where success was measured in visible markers. The size of your house, the make of your car, the school your children attended, the title on your business card. A horologist did not fit into that framework. A man who worked in a basement did not generate dinner party conversation. A husband who earned $45,000 a year, repairing the antique clocks of wealthy families who barely remembered his name, was not the life she had imagined for herself. "I married a man who lives underground," she told her sister once, on the phone, not realizing I was sitting on the stairs listening. "He does not even know what century it is. He is surrounded by things from the 1800s, and I think part of him wishes he lived there instead of here." My sister Morgan took after my mother in every way. She had the same practical mind, the same impatience with anything that could not be measured or marketed. She thought our father was eccentric at best, pathetic at worst. "Dad, you have been working on that same clock for 3 weeks," she would say, peering into the basement with the expression of someone looking into a cage at the zoo. "Why do you not just tell the customer it cannot be fixed?" "Everything can be fixed," my father would say. "Some things just take more time. Some things are not worth the time." My brother Cole was different from Morgan but equally distant from our father. He was ambitious and athletic, the kind of person who measured every hour by what it produced. He ran track in high school, worked summers at a bank, graduated from business school at the top of his class. He did not understand our father's work because he could not see the return on investment. "What is the point of spending 40 hours restoring a clock worth $200? Cole asked once. "Your time alone is worth more than the clock." "The point is not the money," my father said. "The point is the clock." Cole shook his head and went back to his spreadsheets. I was the only one who understood. I was 5 years old the first time my father let me into his workshop. Not just into the room, I had been in the room plenty of times, but into the work. He sat me on a stool next to his workbench, placed a broken pocket watch in my hand, and told me to listen. "What do you hear?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "It is broken. Listen harder." I held the watch up to my ear, the cool metal pressing against my skin, and I listened as hard as a 5-year-old can listen. "I hear a tiny click, like a hiccup." My father smiled, that rare wide smile that made his whole face transform. "That is the mainspring. It is stuck, not broken. There is a very important difference between stuck and broken. Most people cannot tell, but you can." He taught me everything he knew. Not in lessons, not in formal instruction, but in the slow accumulation of thousands of hours spent together in that basement. I learned to identify movements by sound, to feel the tension in a mainspring through my fingertips, to see the microscopic imperfections in a gear tooth that were causing a clock to lose 3 seconds per day. I learned that every clock had a history. The scratches on a case told you how many homes it had lived in. The dust inside the mechanism told you how long it had been neglected. The repairs, the patched springs and replaced gears and jury-rigged solutions that previous owners had attempted, told you how much someone had once cared about keeping this machine alive. Clocks are like people. My father told me once when I was 12, everyone looks at the face and thinks they know what time it is. But the real story is behind the face. The real story is in the mechanism, in the parts you cannot see. I remembered that. My mother left when I was 14. The affair had been going on for months before any of us knew, though looking back, the signs were obvious. She started dressing differently, wearing jewelry we had never seen before, coming home from book club, smelling like a cologne that was not my father's. She started criticizing my father more openly, comparing him unfavorably to men she called friends from work, men who had titles and corner offices and vacation homes. One night, I came downstairs for water and found her on the phone in the kitchen, her voice low and warm in a way I had never heard her speak to my father. "I know," she was saying. "I know. Soon, I promise. I just need to find the right time." She saw me and her face went pale. "Go back to bed, Garrett." The right time came on a Wednesday evening in November. My father was in the basement, as always. I was doing homework at the kitchen table. Cole was at a friend's house. Morgan was in her room. My mother came downstairs with 2 suitcases, set them by the front door, and walked to the top of the basement stairs. "Leland," she called, "I need you to come up here." My father appeared at the bottom of the stairs, a jeweler's loupe still perched on his forehead, his hands spotted with machine oil. He looked up at her, then at the suitcases, and his face changed in a way I had never seen before, like something inside him was breaking in real time. "Vivian," he said, "I am leaving." She said it flatly, without emotion, like she was reading from a script she had rehearsed until all the feeling had been drained out of the words. "I have filed for divorce. Graham's lawyer will be in touch with your lawyer, if you have one." Graham Ashford. He is a real estate developer. He has a house in Westfield Heights, a condo in Manhattan, and a future that does not involve sitting in a basement surrounded by things from the 19th century. My father climbed the stairs slowly, one step at a time, each step measured and deliberate, the way he did everything. When he reached the top, he stood in front of my mother and looked at her with an expression that was not anger, was not sadness, but was something more complex. Something that contained 20 years of trying and failing to be something he was not. "I am sorry," he said. "I am sorry I could not be what you needed. You could have been. You chose not to. There is a difference." "Is there?" She stared at him, waiting for him to argue, to fight, to beg. He did none of those things. He just stood there, his hands at his sides, oil stains on his fingers. A man who had nothing to offer except himself and had finally learned that himself was not enough. "The children will decide where they want to live," she said. "Of course. I cannot live like this anymore, Leland." Her voice finally cracked, just slightly, showing a sliver of the emotion underneath. "I cannot spend another year watching you disappear into that hole in the ground. I cannot grow old with a man who loves machines more than people. I do not love machines more than people. Then why are you always down there?" He looked at her for a long moment, and I could see him weighing his words, deciding how much truth to share. In the end, he chose silence. He shook his head, turned around, and walked back down the stairs. My mother watched him go. Then she picked up her suitcases and walked out the front door. Morgan chose our mother instantly, packing her bags that same night with the efficiency of someone who had been waiting for this moment. Cole went with her too, after a week of deliberation that was mostly about which household had better internet and a more impressive address. I stayed. "You are making a mistake," my mother said when I told her my decision. She was standing in the doorway of our house, looking past me at the hallway that led to the basement stairs, her expression a mixture of pity and contempt. "There is nothing for you here. Your father lives in a basement. He has no ambition, no future, no plan. He will die down there with those clocks, and if you stay, you will die down there too." "Maybe," I said, "but at least I will know how they work." She looked at me like I had spoken in a language she did not understand, like I had chosen to stay on a sinking ship when there were perfectly good lifeboats available. Then she left. My father and I settled into a quiet routine after that. He worked in the basement. I went to school, came home, joined him. We would work side by side for hours, sometimes talking, sometimes not, the only sound the ticking of the clocks and the delicate click of tools against metal. The house felt enormous with just the two of us in it. 3 empty bedrooms upstairs, a kitchen that had been designed for a family of 5, a living room where 4 people used to sit and watch television and pretend they were happy together. Now it was just me and my father, orbiting each other in the quiet spaces between the ticking. But it was peaceful. For the first time in my memory, the house was free of tension, free of disappointment, free of the constant unspoken accusation that my father was failing at something he had never agreed to attempt. He cooked dinner for us every night. Simple meals, nothing fancy, but he put care into them the same way he put care into everything. He asked about my schoolwork, my friends, the girl I had a crush on. He was not a naturally talkative man, but he tried, and I loved him for trying. On weekends, we worked on the clocks. He taught me the names of things: balance wheel, escapement, hairspring, fusee chain. Beautiful words for beautiful mechanisms, each one a tiny marvel of engineering that converted stored energy into measured time. And he taught me the other thing, the secret thing, the thing that would change my life years later when I opened that leather notebook. People hide things in clocks, he told me one evening, while we were disassembling a French ormolu mantel clock from the 1860s. They always have. Clocks are the one object in a house that no one opens. No one looks behind the face. No one examines the mechanism. A clock sits on a mantle for 100 years, and nobody ever thinks to look inside. What kind of things? Everything. He carefully removed the faceplate and gestured for me to look. Letters, money, jewelry, keys, deeds, secrets that people wanted to keep safe, hidden in a place no one would think to look. Have you ever found anything? He looked at me with an expression I did not recognize at the time. It was not quite a smile. It was something more complicated. Something that contained anticipation and patience and a secret he was not ready to share. A few things, he said. Here and there. That was all he would say. I asked again over the years, and the answer was always the same. A few things. Here and there. And then he would change the subject, guiding my attention back to whatever mechanism we were working on, teaching me to focus on what was in front of me rather than what might be hidden behind it. I understand now what he was doing. He was waiting. He was cataloging. He was building something that would only reveal itself after he was gone. I went to college, got a degree in engineering, found a job at a manufacturing company in Hartford. The pay was decent, the work was steady, and it had absolutely nothing to do with clocks. But I could not stay away from the basement. Every Friday after work, I drove the 45 minutes from Hartford to Westfield and spent the weekend with my father. It became the rhythm of my life, the constant that anchored everything else. Girlfriends came and went, jobs shifted and changed, apartments were rented and vacated. But the weekends in the basement never changed. My father was getting older, moving more slowly, his eyesight requiring stronger magnification, his hands less steady than they had once been. But his mind was as sharp as ever, and his knowledge of clocks was encyclopedic in a way that no textbook could match. He had clients who had been bringing him their timepieces for decades, families who trusted no one else with their heirlooms, the Whitfields with their collection of English bracket clocks, the Pattersons with their grandmother's Swiss music boxes, the DeLucas, who had a French ormolu clock that had supposedly belonged to Napoleon's personal valet. The DeLuca clock is interesting, my father told me one Saturday, as we examined its mechanism under a lamp. The movement is original, but the case has been modified. Someone added a false panel in the base sometime in the late 1800s. A false panel? It is common in older European clocks. People used them to hide valuables during wartime, during revolutions, during any period of upheaval. He glanced at me. This one is empty now. But it was not always empty. How can you tell? Scratch marks on the interior. Adhesive residue. The faint impression of something rectangular. Maybe an envelope or a small box. He smiled. The clock remembers, even after the secret is gone. I wondered, at the time, how many secrets he had found over the years. How many false panels and hidden compartments and concealed chambers had revealed their contents to his patient, careful hands. But I knew better than to ask directly. He would tell me when he was ready. He was not ready for a long time. The cancer came suddenly. 1 week he was fine, working 12 hours a day, his hands steady enough to adjust a hairspring that was thinner than a human eyelash. The next week he was coughing blood into his handkerchief and trying to hide it from me. How long have you known? I asked when I found the crumpled tissues in the bathroom trash. A few weeks. Dad, I did not want to worry you, and there was work to finish. Work can wait. Clocks cannot. He smiled, but his eyes were tired. Clocks are the only thing that waits for no one. The diagnosis was pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The oncologist gave him 6 months with treatment, 3 without. What does treatment involve? My father asked. Chemotherapy, twice a week. Significant side effects. Nausea, fatigue, hair loss. Will my hands still work? The doctor paused, confused. Excuse me? My hands. Will the treatment affect my fine motor skills? I need my hands for my work. The doctor assured him that his hands would still function, though the fatigue would likely make sustained work difficult. My father agreed to treatment on that condition alone. Not because he wanted to live longer, I think, but because he had clocks to finish. He had work that needed his hands. I moved back to Westfield. I quit my job, sublet my apartment, and came home to take care of the man who had never asked anyone to take care of him. I drove him to appointments. I sat with him during chemo, holding his hand while the machines dripped poison into his veins. I carried him down the basement stairs when he was too weak to walk, because he wanted to be near the clocks, because their ticking was the sound of his life's work and he needed to hear it. In those final months, he worked whenever he had the strength. Some days that meant 8 hours at the bench. Some days that meant 20 minutes before exhaustion pulled him under. But every day, he descended those stairs and sat in his chair and listened to the 400 hearts beating around him. "I need to tell you something," he said one afternoon, 3 weeks before he died. We were sitting in the basement, surrounded by the sound of 400 mechanisms marking time. His voice was barely a whisper. "You do not need to tell me anything, Dad." "Yes, I do." He gripped my hand. "The clocks, Garrett. The clocks are not just clocks." "What do you mean?" "In 40 years of repair work, I have opened thousands of timepieces. And in hundreds of them I found things. Things that people hid decades ago, generations ago. Things that the current owners have no idea are there." "What kinds of things?" "Valuable things. Coins, bonds, jewelry, documents. Things that people hid during wars and depressions and family crises, tucked inside the one object they knew would survive. The one object nobody would think to open." "How many?" He smiled, that same complicated smile I remembered from when I was 12. 400. Every clock in this room has something inside it. I have been cataloging them for 40 years. The notebook on my workbench, the leather one, it has every entry. Every clock, every hiding place, every item. I stared at him. 40 years? You have known about this for 40 years. 40 years of finding things that other people overlooked. 40 years of documenting what was hidden inside the mechanisms I was hired to repair. He paused, catching his breath. Some of it I returned to the families when I could determine the rightful owners. But many of those families are gone. Many of those clocks were brought to me by estate sales and antique dealers who had no idea what was inside. And legally, anything found during the course of repair belongs to the repairman unless the owner makes a claim. "Dad, how much are we talking about?" "The notebook will tell you." He squeezed my hand. "But I want you to understand something, Garrett. I did not keep these things because of their monetary value. I kept them because every one of them is a story. A gold coin hidden during the Depression by a father who wanted to make sure his children would have something if the banks failed. A love letter tucked inside a music box by a woman whose husband went to war and never came back. A deed to a property that someone hid from creditors, hoping to retrieve it someday, but never did." He looked around at the clocks, his life's work. 400 stories, 400 secrets, all hidden inside machines that the world thought were worthless. He died 11 days later, peacefully, in his sleep, with the sound of ticking clocks filtering up from the basement where he had spent his life. The will reading was perfunctory. Cole got the house, which he planned to sell immediately. Morgan got the savings account, $300,000 that my father had accumulated through 40 years of steady, modest work. My mother, who had not spoken to my father in over 20 years, received nothing. She had not expected to. I got the workshop, 400 clocks, a workbench, and a leather notebook with my name on the cover. "That is it," Cole said, looking genuinely annoyed. "He left me a house I have to deal with selling, and he left you a basement full of broken clocks? At least he can fix them," Morgan said, smirking. "Eventually. They are just clocks," Cole said. "Sell them on eBay. Get a few $100. I took the notebook home. I sat at my kitchen table and opened it to the first page. The handwriting was meticulous, the careful script of a man who spent his days working with precision instruments. Each entry was numbered, dated, and detailed. Clock number 1. Howard Miller Grandfather Clock, 1923. Received for repair, October 1984. Behind the faceplate, third gear from the left, a leather pouch sewn into the clock case lining. Contents: 14 gold Liberty head coins, dated 1891 through 1907. Research indicates coins were hidden during the panic of 1907 by original owner, a banker in Hartford who feared the collapse of the banking system. Family line ended in 1961. No living heirs identified. Estimated current value of coins, $42,000. I turned the page. Clock number 2. Ansonia crystal regulator, circa 1890. Received for repair, January 1985. Inside the pendulum housing, wrapped in waxed paper. Contents: 2 $20 gold certificates, 1928 series. Hidden likely during the Great Depression. Original owner: the Pennington estate, sold at auction in 1979. No family claim possible. Estimated current value, $18,000. I kept turning pages. Clock number 17. Swiss music box with clock mechanism, 1871. Inside the music cylinder compartment, concealed beneath the tune card. Contents: a diamond and sapphire ring, approximately 3 carats total weight, with a handwritten note reading for Eleanor, when she is old enough. No Eleanor has ever claimed the ring. Estimated value, $36,000. Clock number 43. English bracket clock, Thomas Tompion style, circa 1740. Behind a false panel in the base. Contents: the original deed to a property in Lower Manhattan, dated 1868. Property research indicates the lot is currently part of a commercial development. Deed may have significant legal implications. Estimated value requires legal review, but potentially several $1,000,000. I read for hours. Every entry was a story. Every clock was a secret. Gold coins from the Gilded Age. Bearer bonds from World War II that had never been cashed. Letters from soldiers who never came home. Photographs of families long since scattered to the wind. Keys to safety deposit boxes in banks that no longer existed. Jewelry hidden by mothers for daughters who were never told where to look. For 100 clocks. For 100 secrets. 40 years of discovery, all documented in my father's precise, patient handwriting. At the bottom of the last entry, on the final page of the notebook, there was a note written in a different pen, fresher ink, probably added in his last weeks. Garrett, by now you have read the inventory. You know what is hidden in these clocks. You know what I have been doing down here for 40 years while the world thought I was wasting my life. I want to explain why I never told anyone. When I found the first cash, the coins in the Howard Miller clock, I was young and I needed money. Your mother was pregnant with Cole, and we could barely afford the mortgage. I could have sold those coins and paid off our debts. I could have revealed what I had found and changed our financial situation overnight. But something stopped me. I looked at those coins, hidden in 1907 by a man who feared the collapse of everything he had built, and I felt a responsibility. Not to the money, but to the story, to the act of hiding, of protecting, of entrusting something precious to the one machine that would keep running long after everyone else had stopped. That man hid those coins because he trusted the clock. He trusted that it would outlast the crisis, the panic, the fear. He trusted that someday, someone would open the mechanism and find what he had left behind. He trusted me. He did not know my name or my face. But he trusted that the person who eventually opened that clock would understand the value of what was inside. I could not betray that trust by selling it for a few $1,000s. So I kept it. And when I found the next treasure and the next and the next, I kept those too. I documented everything. I researched the provenance. I identified the families when I could, and I returned what rightfully belonged to them. But for the ones with no owners, no heirs, no one left to claim them, I became the custodian. I became the keeper of things that would otherwise be lost. Your mother called me a man who stopped. Your brother called me a waste of potential. Your sister called me pathetic. They looked at my life and saw a failure because they measured success in dollars and status and the opinions of others. But I was not stopped, Garrett. I was moving at a different speed. I was working on a different clock. I was building something that would only reveal its value after everyone stopped looking. The total appraised value of the items in these clocks is approximately $14.2 million. That number will change as certain items are professionally evaluated, particularly the Manhattan deed, which could be worth significantly more. But here is what matters more than the money. I did not leave you these clocks because of what is inside them. I left them to you because you are the only person in this family who ever understood what it means to sit with something broken and listen for the secret it is keeping. You were the only one who came to the basement, the only one who learned the names of the parts, the only one who understood that patience is not the same as stopping, that stillness is not the same as death, that a man surrounded by broken things is not broken himself. You are a horologist, Garrett. Whether you work in a factory or a basement, that is what you are. You listen for the things that other people miss. You find value in the things that other people discard. Open the clocks. Find the stories. Honor the secrets. And when you are done, keep the clocks running. That is all I ever asked of anyone. Keep the clocks running. All my love, Dad. I spent the next 4 months opening every clock in that basement. I did it the way my father would have done it. Carefully, methodically, one clock at a time, one mechanism at a time, documenting everything I found and cross-referencing it with his notebook. Every morning I descended those stairs, turned on the workbench lamp, and chose the next clock on the list. I treated each one as my father would have treated it, with respect and patience and the understanding that I was not just opening a machine. I was opening a story. I found the gold coins in the Howard Miller first, exactly where the notebook said they would be. 14 Liberty Head coins, each one gleaming like the day they were minted, tucked into a leather pouch that had been sewn into the lining of the case by someone whose stitching was as careful as my father's clockwork. $42,000, hidden for over 100 years by a man who feared the banks would fail. I found the bearer bonds in the French carriage clock, wrapped in waxed paper so old it crumbled at my touch. Inside the paper, 2 certificates worth $18,000, hidden by someone during the Great Depression who never came back to retrieve them. I found the diamond ring in the Swiss music box, nestled inside the cylinder compartment where the tune pins normally sat. The note that accompanied it was faded but legible. For Eleanor, when she is old enough. No Eleanor had ever come. The ring had waited 93 years for a girl who never arrived. Each discovery was like a conversation across time. I was speaking to people who had lived 100 years ago, people who had feared and loved and hidden their most precious possessions inside the one machine they trusted to keep their secrets. In clock number 67, a Viennese wall clock from 1880, I found a stack of letters tied with a ribbon. Love letters, written in German, from a woman named Liesel to a man named Johann. The letters spanned 4 years, from 1882 to 1886, and they told the story of a forbidden love between a Jewish woman and a Catholic man in a time when such relationships were unthinkable. The last letter was different from the others. It was short, hurried, the handwriting shaking. Johann, I am leaving Vienna tonight. Father has discovered us. I am hiding these letters where he will never find them. If you receive this, come to the clock shop on Kartnerstrasse. The clockmaker is a friend. He will know where I have gone. I will wait for you. I will always wait for you. Your Liesel. Johann never came to the clock shop. Or if he did, he never found the letters. They had waited inside that Viennese wall clock for over 140 years. A love story frozen in time, preserved by the very mechanism that measured its passing. My father had found them decades ago. He had read them. He had researched the names. He had discovered that Liesel had emigrated to America in 1887, settled in Pennsylvania, married a man who was not Johann, had 4 children, and died at the age of 91 in 1967. She had lived a full life, but she had never gone back for the letters. In clock number 112, an English bracket clock from the 1740s, I found the document my father had flagged as the most potentially valuable item in the entire collection. Behind a false panel in the base, sealed in a wax envelope that had preserved it perfectly for over 150 years, was an original deed to a property in Lower Manhattan, dated 1868. I hired a lawyer, a real estate specialist who took one look at the deed and asked me to sit down. This property, she said, pointing to the address on the document, is currently the site of a commercial building worth approximately $30 million. The deed you are holding has never been transferred, canceled, or superseded. As far as I can determine, it is still legally valid. What does that mean? It means that whoever hid this deed inside that clock still technically owns the property. Or rather, their heirs do. If no heirs can be identified, and if the deed was found during legitimate repair work by a licensed practitioner, which your father's records clearly show, then the chain of ownership becomes very interesting. The legal battle took 18 months. Lawyers argued. Documents were produced. Historians testified about the provenance of the deed and the history of the property. In the end, the court ruled in my favor. The deed was valid. The original owner's line had died out in 1912, and as the finder of record, I had a legitimate claim. The settlement was $6.2 million. More money than my father had earned in his entire career of fixing clocks. In a Vienna regulator from 1855, I found a lock of hair tied with a blue ribbon and a note that read, "My darling Friedrich, I will wait for you." Friedrich never came back. But the hair had waited for 170 years inside a clock that still kept perfect time. In a French carriage clock from the 1920s, I found a thin gold chain with a locket containing 2 photographs. A young couple, barely out of their teens, smiling with the invincible confidence of people who had no idea what the century had in store for them. On the back of the locket, engraved in tiny letters, Paris, 1924, forever. In a simple American shelf clock from the 1840s, the oldest in my father's collection, I found something that made me sit down on the basement floor and stare at the ceiling for 20 minutes. A letter, handwritten, dated 1847. To whoever finds this, my name is Elias March, and I am placing this letter inside this clock because I believe it will outlast me and everything I know. I am 43 years old. I have a wife named Ruth and 3 children whose names are Samuel, David, and little Mary, who is just learning to walk. I am a clockmaker by trade, and I built this timepiece with my own hands. I do not know if anyone will ever read these words. But if you do, please know that we were here. We lived. We loved. We mattered. Remember us. Remember us. That was all. No treasure. No fortune. Just a man from 180 years ago, asking someone in the future to know that he had existed. My father had found this letter decades ago. He had kept it inside the clock. He had never told anyone, because he understood that some things are more valuable than gold. When the appraisal was complete, the total value of the items found in my father's 400 clocks came to $14.7 million. The Manhattan deed settlement accounted for over $6 million of that. The gold coins, bearer bonds, and other financial instruments accounted for another $5 million. The jewelry and precious objects made up the rest. But there were items that had no monetary value at all, items that were priceless in the truest sense of the word. The love letters from Liesel to Johann. The lock of Friedrich's hair. The locket from Paris, 1924. The note from Elias March, asking to be remembered. My father had found all of these things and kept them inside the clocks where they belonged, because he understood that removing them would sever the connection between the object and its story. The clock and its secret were one thing, one artifact, one message from the past to the future. I honored that understanding. The items with monetary value were appraised, catalogued, and handled according to my father's notes. Some were donated to museums. Some were sold at auction, with the proceeds going to the foundation I created in his name. The Manhattan deed settlement went into a trust that would fund the workshop and the scholarship program for generations. But the personal items, the letters and photographs and locks of hair and handwritten notes, stayed inside their clocks, where they belonged, where someone had placed them 100 years ago, trusting that the machine would keep their secret safe. The news leaked, as news always does when large sums of money are involved. Cole called the day after the story appeared in the Hartford Courant. 14 million? His voice was tight with something I recognized immediately, the same controlled fury our mother used when things did not go her way. In the clocks? In those broken clocks in the basement. 14.7. That is insane. That is absolutely insane. I could hear him pacing, his shoes clicking on what sounded like hardwood floors. His Manhattan apartment. His corner office life. The world of visible success that he had chosen over our father's basement. You are telling me that Dad sat on $14 million for 40 years and never said a word? That is exactly what I am telling you. Why? Why would anyone do that? Because the money was not the point. The stories were the point. The preservation was the point. That is ridiculous. That is the kind of thing people say when they do not understand money. Dad understood money better than any of us, Cole. He just did not worship it. Long silence. I should have gotten the workshop, he said finally. I am the oldest. The house should have gone to you, and the workshop should have been mine. I should have had first choice. You did have a choice. You chose the house. You said, and I quote, that the clocks were worthless junk that I should sell on eBay. Because I did not know what was inside them. That is misrepresentation. That is concealment of assets. Dad knew what was in those clocks, and he deliberately structured the will to give them to the person who would understand what to do with them. That is not fraud, Cole. That is a father knowing his children. Another long silence. I could hear his breathing, fast and shallow, the breathing of a man who was trying very hard not to lose control. I want my share, he said. There is no share. The will was explicit. The workshop and everything in it. I will get a lawyer. You should do whatever you think is right. He did get a lawyer. The lawyer reviewed the will, reviewed the notebook, reviewed the provenance of every item, and told Cole he had no case. The language was clear. The intent was clear. The bequest was ironclad. Cole did not speak to me for a year after that. When he finally called again, his voice was different, quieter. The anger had burned itself out and left something else behind. Something that sounded almost like grief. I should have come to the basement, he said. All those years. I should have gone down there. I should have sat with him. I should have learned what he was doing. Yes, I said. You should have. Would it have made a difference? Would Dad have left me the clocks instead? I do not think so. It was never about who visited and who did not. It was about who listened, who understood what he was doing down there, who cared about the work, not the results. And that was you. That was me. There was a pause, and when Cole spoke again, his voice cracked. I missed it all, Garrett. I had a father who was doing something extraordinary, and I walked right past it every day for 18 years. I walked past that basement door, and I never once thought to go down those stairs and ask him what he was working on. You can still go down those stairs, I said. The workshop is still there. The clocks are still ticking. It is not the same. No, it is not. But it is something. He came to visit 3 months later. We spent the weekend in the basement together, and I showed him the clocks, the notebook, the treasures still hidden inside their mechanisms. He held the Elias March letter for a long time, reading and rereading the words of a man from 1847 who just wanted to be remembered. He was right, Cole said quietly. Dad was right about everything. I know. I am sorry I could not see it. I am sorry too. Morgan's reaction was simpler. She called once, asked how much the items were worth, and when I told her, she said, well, I guess Dad was not as stupid as we thought. Then she hung up. We have not spoken since. My mother reached out through her lawyer, claiming that as my father's ex-wife, she was entitled to a portion of any undisclosed assets acquired during the marriage. The claim was dismissed. The divorce had been finalized over 20 years ago, and the clocks had been continuously acquired throughout his career, many of them after the divorce. She sent me a letter after that, short and bitter. I lived with that man for 15 years and I never knew what he was doing. He let me believe he was a failure. He let me leave. He never once told me the truth. I wrote back. One sentence. He did not owe you the truth. You never asked the right questions. I kept some of the money, enough to quit my engineering job and do what I had always wanted to do. I opened a workshop, not in a basement, but in a proper storefront in downtown Westfield, with large windows that let in the morning light and a sign above the door that reads Sable and Son, horologists. The and Son refers to me, but it also refers to something else. To the unbroken line of people who have sat with broken things and listened for the secrets they were keeping. My father was a link in that chain. I am another, and whoever comes after me, Whoever I teach the names of the parts and the patience of the work, they will be the next. I repair clocks, just like my father did. Just like Elias March did in 1847 when he built the shelf clock that now hangs on my wall. I sit with broken mechanisms and listen for the sounds that tell me what is wrong, what is stuck, what needs care and attention to start moving again. Clients come from all over the state now, some from even farther. They bring me their grandmother's mantel clocks and their great-grandfather's pocket watches and the cuckoo clocks they bought on honeymoons in Switzerland 40 years ago. They bring me broken things and ask me to make them whole. Sometimes I find things inside. A note tucked behind a faceplate. A coin lodged in a gear housing. A photograph that slipped between the case and the mechanism decades ago and has been riding along in secret ever since. When I find these things, I document them the way my father taught me. I research the provenance. I try to identify the original owner, the person who hid this small piece of their life inside a machine they trusted to keep it safe. And when I cannot find the owner, I keep the secret inside the clock, where it belongs. The rest of the money went to the things my father would have wanted. A scholarship fund for students studying horology and the preservation of mechanical arts. A museum exhibit at the Westfield Historical Society featuring the most significant items found in the clocks, along with the stories of the people who hid them. A foundation dedicated to preserving the craft of clockmaking, ensuring that the skills my father spent his life mastering would not disappear in a world that has moved on to digital screens and atomic precision. The exhibit draws visitors from across the country. People come to see the gold coins and the bearer bonds and the diamond ring, the objects with obvious monetary value. But the items that hold them longest are the ones that are priceless. The love letters from Liesel to Johann. The lock of Friedrich's hair. The locket from Paris, 1924. The note from Elias March. People stand in front of these displays and read the stories, and something happens to them. Their faces change. The rush of the modern world drops away for a moment, and they are connected to something older and deeper and more important than whatever was on their phone 5 minutes ago. They are connected to the people who hid these things, to the fear and love and hope that drove someone to tuck a note inside a clock and trust that the future would find it. That is my father's real legacy. Not the money, not the clocks, not the 400 secrets he discovered over 40 years. His real legacy is the understanding that time is not something that passes. It is something that accumulates. Every second, every minute, every hour adds to the weight of a life, and the things we hide inside the minutes, the love and the fear and the hope, those things do not disappear just because the clock stops. They wait, they persist, they endure, just like my father endured. Sitting in his basement for 40 years while the world called him stopped, listening to the secrets that everyone else was too busy to hear. In my workshop, on the wall behind my bench, there is a simple American shelf clock from the 1840s. Keeps perfect time. It has for almost 200 years. The mechanism is original, maintained and serviced by 3 generations of horologists, each one passing it to the next along with the knowledge of how to keep it running. Inside it, still tucked behind the mechanism where my father left it, is a letter from a man named Elias March, asking whoever finds it to know that he was here. I know, Elias. I know you were here. My father knew too. And now, everyone who walks into my shop and reads the small plaque beneath that clock will know it as well. Remember us. That is all any of us ever really want. To be remembered. To know that the time we spent mattered. That the things we built and fixed and loved did not disappear the moment we stopped. My father understood that better than anyone I have ever known. He sat in a basement for 40 years, and the world thought he had stopped. His wife left him. His children abandoned him. His name was spoken with pity or contempt by everyone who thought they knew what a successful life looked like. But he was never stopped. He was listening. He was finding. He was keeping secrets safe until someone was ready to hear them. And when the time was right, the clocks told me everything. Every single one of them. All 400. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Before you go, I have left 2 more stories here on your screen. Both from men who discovered that family is not always who you are born to. It is who stands by you when the truth comes out. Click on whichever one calls to you. And if you want to join our community of people who understand what it is like to be the outsider looking in, that notification bell is your invitation. Until tomorrow, remember, your story matters, even if they tried to erase it.